It's time for another in our line of very popular comparison videos. This time it's Pac-Man from Arcade Classics and My Arcade. And Arcade Classics. We'll sort it all out right now.
Don't you know that you're a grown-up? No games, no puns. Not allowed if you're a grown-up.
Hey there, welcome back to Gen X Grown Up. I'm John. I am a Gen X Grown Up. Thank you for checking out this video and hopefully the rest of the channel. You know, I've really been enjoying collecting these little tabletop handheld versions of old arcade games. Among the cool things I enjoy about this collecting hobby is getting the same title from different manufacturers and comparing and contrasting them to kind of see who wore it best, who did a better job of creating the version of this game. And in this case, it's Pac-Man. The My Arcade version of Pac-Man has been out for quite some time. In fact, I already did a review of it in a previous video. The latest entry, though, that prompted this comparison video is this new Pac-Man from Arcade Classics. Now, if this sounds like a familiar tune, you're not wrong. It's not the first time they've done a Pac-Man. They did this 14, they did number 7 some time ago. In fact, they even did number 1. Their first entry was also a Pac-Man. If you want to see all of them that are out there, Glenn of Glenn's Retro Show did a really good job because he has every variation and permutation. I'll throw a link to his channel and video up in the corner if you want to see those. What I'm most interested in here, though, is taking the latest entry from both manufacturers. We've already seen the My Arcade, as I mentioned. The Arcade Classics doesn't have a great Pac-Man track record, so we're going to find out if either of them is worth your money. Before we do, if this is your first time watching Gen X Grown Up, look for that little bar that lifts. It's got a subscribe button in the corner. Maybe give that a click, enable those notifications. That'll allow you to easily check out way more of our Gen X inspired stuff. All right, it's Pac-Man, Pac-Man right now. Here is your assembled cast of characters. Now in this video, we're mainly talking about these two on the end, the My Arcade and this new number 14. But you can't talk about number 14's Arcade Classics without talking about this number 7 and subsequently the number 1. We'll get into that. But let's get started with these two first, and then we'll do a bit of a history lesson to see why the other ones come into play. Starting first with this My Arcade Pac-Man. Now, I actually already did a review of this in a previous video, and I'll throw a link up there in the corner, but we need to have this for comparison because we're looking at the My Arcade versus the Arcade Classics. Out of the box, let's start with a recap of what we already know. The My Arcade units, I think, are superior in design. They look more like an arcade cabinet. They're a little bit beefier. They previously have struggled in terms of kind of screen quality, controller quality, but what we know, power button on the front, we have speaker on the back. You can also charge by micro USB. Batteries are not included, and you do have a volume level here so you can set it louder or softer, and a headphone jack is included. So overall design of the My Arcades, I think, is superior. Now let's move on to the Arcade Classics. This latest Pac-Man, number 14, is not the first, not the second, but the third time that Arcade Classics has done this cabinet in a release. And there's been more than that, even if you count the kind of repackages and the re-artworks. This one has a new full color screen, not to be confused with number 7, which had a new color screen, but that's not where the confusion ends. Here then is the number 14 Arcade Classics out of the box, certainly different than the My Arcade, but let's compare that to the number 7. Man, it starts to get more and more confusing. Can you spot all the little differences? It's subtle. This was the number 7, this is the new number 14. There's going to be a lot of confusion in the marketplace for anyone who walks in and just says, I'm going to pick up a Pac-Man, because at this point, there are so many versions floating around that look almost identical. Let's give the requisite tour. Okay, so you have the side art. The Arcade Classics are a little more compact. They're a little more squished looking. It has an on-off button and a volume level here as well. It looks like stereo sound, but if you look, there's only a speaker in this left one. That's just for symmetry, I guess. These do include batteries, but no USB charging and no headset option. Of course, it ultimately, though, comes down to the gameplay. Having reviewed this one already, we know that the gameplay is a classic NES ROM, and it's nothing custom, and it kind of leaves something to be desired in that review that I already showed you. And then there's the Arcade Classics, an unknown commodity. It's brand new. The previous ones from Arcade Classics were not all that great, but they seem to have changed their tune recently in terms of making kind of new custom ROMs, so let's find out for sure which one is going to win this head-to-head. And when I say which one of the two is going to win in a heads-up battle, that's because I don't even count this one in the battle. It is so bad. I did a review of this one too, and I'll put a link to it in the corner. I mean, just look at what this thing is. I mean, it looks terrible. It sounds terrible. It's LCD. I mean, yeah, it looks like an old like Game & Watch or Tomy Pocket or something, but no, the ghosts turn red. What is that? Yeah, okay. Now, I actually never picked up a number 1 from Arcade Classics. The number 7 was bad enough that I didn't want to go back in time. Imagine reality as you know it, but a little more drab and morose. That's right, it was the same Pac-Man, but with a black and white LCD screen. Nothing I even want in my collection, frankly, and not one that I intend to add, but now you know where Arcade Classics has been, so you can see where they have arrived today. To the My Arcade then, as I mentioned before, I've reviewed this in a different video if you want to see that, but I want to just quickly play a little bit for reference. Yep, 1980, so that's the original ROM from NES. Give that a shot. Yeah, don't like the pitch of that. Yeah, it all just sounds a little differently pitched, a little lower pitched. It's certainly better than that number 7 from Arcade Classics, but it's still not really Pac-Man. It's a good facsimile. I don't know what that siren noise is, but that's not right. It sounds like a 1980s arcade game, but not Pac-Man. Like it has the right kind of blippy noises, but not for this game. And by this time, I've purchased so many versions of Pac-Man that what I'm looking for, frankly, is accuracy. I don't need another mismatched version of Pac-Man. I need to get closer and closer. If you're not going to have the real ROM, you've got to do better than this. All right, finally, let's move on to this number 14 from Arcade Classics. It's set of 2019. It is a custom ROM. Again, they've continued to do this, which I'm a big fan of. If you're not going to have the original, at least do as close as you can. So, it's like Start didn't do. Oh, it's vertical, so that's a plus. Even though the screen is wide, it's wasting that real estate. Why didn't you just go vertical with the whole cabinet? But let's see. Oh, sounds good. Looks good. This seems really good. It feels a little slower than I'm accustomed to, but that could just be from playing sped up ROMs. All the voices seem to be there. The siren got faster. That's good. Let's take this all the way out to the completion of a board. Look at that, cutting a corner sped me up. That's accurate to the original ROM. The siren is perfect. Nice and high-pitched. And our flash. All right, this is Pac-Man. I mean, yes, it's not the original ROM, but by golly, this is a good custom version of Pac-Man. Whew, Arcade Classics, way to step up your game. This is the best version by far that I picked up. Whoa, did you catch that? Look, remember I said that having all these Arcade Classics Pac-Man would confuse the marketplace? Look at this, there's confusion in my place. It wasn't until I was almost done editing, I realized I had picked up the number 7 instead of the 14 to give my summary of number 14. Okay, so moving on then. Ooh, Arcade Classics, you have really stepped up your game here. This is the best Pac-Man by far that any of these have put out. I don't mean just My Arcade and Arcade Classics, but this is the best one in a handheld form factor that I've ever had. Admittedly, we've said it's not the arcade ROM, but it's really, really close and it gives you that good experience. That may have just stacked the deck, but this is a comparison video, so let's go back to the My Arcade. When I reviewed this previously in the video I mentioned, I gave this a 3.5 tokens out of 5. I'm not going to retroactively kind of change that. If I was reviewing it today, knowing what I know and the advancements we've seen, I might go lower, but we're going to keep it locked in at a 3.5. That's still fair. It's still a good product with a really superior package that it comes in. But if you're looking for the best possible gameplay experience from a Pac-Man game, it's gotta be this Arcade Classics. I'm gonna go with 4.5 tokens out of 5. The real question then comes, is this worth another 20 bucks if you already have the number 1, the number 7, the My Arcade? In my opinion, yes. I'm looking for that pure arcade experience. This is the closest you can get, so it's worth that extra 20 bucks to upgrade and replace those others that you have. If you don't already have one of the other versions, well then this is a no-brainer. The number 14 Pac-Man from Arcade Classics, definitely worth that 20 bucks and you won't regret it. Or if you're a full-on collector and you just have to have them all, you're not about watching this anyway, you're gonna buy it just like I did because you have to have it. Hey, I really hope you found something in this video to enjoy, and I'll talk to you next time. Bye-bye. GenXGrownUp is dedicated to bringing you new Generation X inspired videos every week. Here are a couple more you can watch right now, but for even more, subscribe and enable those notifications. And if you love what we do, we invite you to support us over on Patreon. And of course, your feedback in the comments and a quick thumbs up are always appreciated.